Thank you for coming here. First of all, I invite the Secretary for Civil Service, Mr. Patrick Nip, to say a few words about the designated quarantine hotel scheme, and then he will take questions from the floor. First, the Secretary. Thank you, friends of the media and members of the public. I would like to give you some information on the arrangement for the designated quarantine hotel. Preventing imported cases is a key strategy of the government's fight against the virus. Around the world, the pandemic remains severe, and we are seeing new mutant strains of virus that is more transmissible. That's why the government must do a proper job in preventing imported cases. Designated quarantine hotel scheme is an important measure under the strategy of preventing imported cases. This is an effective way to prevent travelers from overseas to come into contact with the local community during the quarantine period. The designated quarantine hotel scheme was fully implemented on the 22nd of December last year. In the first batch of the designated hotels, there are 36 of them, providing about 12,000 rooms. The contract for this batch of hotels will expire on the 29th of February. Since the launch of the first batch of the designated hotels, it's been a month. The operation has been going well. The total number of hotel tenants guests are about 9,600. The latest occupancy rate is about 60%. And then we issued, on the 5th of January, we wrote to invite 2,000 licensed hotels and guest houses to apply to become a designated quarantine hotel in the second round. We have so far received more than 70 applications. And this round, there are hotels with lower room rates that have put in applications. As we assess the second batch of the designated hotels, the first and foremost condition is that these hotels must meet the infection control requirements of the Department of Health and other relevant departments. Other factors that we considered include the room rate. For the first batch of designated hotels, if they apply again, we will also look at their performance during the first round, such as the effectiveness of their measures to prevent infection and the occupancy rate and so on. Now, since we have tightened the quarantine period to 21 days and banned flights from the UK and South Africa, we expect there will be fewer arrivals in Hong Kong. That's why in the second round of the designated quarantine hotel scheme, we will slightly adjust downwards the number of rooms to about 10,000. For the new batch of hotel, the list is now ready. There will be 36 hotels in the second round. The contract period will still be 60 days. That is from the 20th of February to the 20th of April. 32 of the hotels in the second batch are hotels in the first batch. And then there are 4 new hotels in the second batch. And then for hotels in the first batch, some are not included in the second batch. So we still have 36 hotels with about 10,000 rooms. Now, because there is a demand for different room rates in the market, so in the new round of the designated quarantine hotel scheme, we have included more hotels with lower room rates. For hotels offering rooms under $500, the number has been increased from 7 to 11. The number of rooms that's been added has doubled, close to over 2,800. And that accounts for about 27% of the hotel rooms provided in the second batch. Compared with the first batch, there's been there are now more than 1,200 rooms offering lower rates. As for rooms as for hotels offering rooms under $1,000, they account for 80% of the total, 8,500 rooms. So there are 8,500 rooms with room rates under $1,000. For the second cycle of the designated quarantine hotels from the 20th to the of February to the 20th of April 2021, you could refer to the site www.designated.hotel.gov.hk for the full details. Apart from designated quarantine hotels, there are other measures to prevent importation of cases such as the nucleic acid test and designated transportation. I will say a few words on that too. For travelers arriving at the airport in Hong Kong, they have to undergo a nucleic acid test. For arrivals, usually after they give their specimen sample, their specimen, they have to wait till there is a negative test result before they will take designated transportation to go to the designated quarantine hotel. Starting from the 15th of December last year, we have changed the specimen sample collection. Originally, it was for travelers to provide deep throat saliva specimen on their own. Now there are medical personnel to collect combined nasal throat swab samples. That is to ensure the quality of the test specimen. From the 22nd of December to the 15th of January, we have identified 38 confirmed cases from the test specimens. Now, travelers have to undergo the test and hold arrangement. That is, they have to wait for a negative test result before they are allowed to leave the airport or the test and hold center. So, and at the same time, the government is still monitoring closely developments in various testing technology so that we could, where possible, adopt faster and more reliable testing technology to facilitate travelers. Starting from the 31st of December, the administration has engaged a contractor to set up laboratories at the airport so they could collect samples from the arrivals for the nucleic test result. The waiting time is now substantially reduced to just 3 to 4 hours at the airport. In the past, the waiting time was some 7 to 8 hours. After the completion of the test and after receiving a negative test result, for all arrivals who have stayed outside of Hong Kong, apart from China, in the 21 days before arrival, have to take designated transportation arranged by the government to go to designated quarantine hotels. For those under the mandatory quarantine requirement 21 days at designated hotels, they must take a test on the 12th day and the 19th or the 20th day on arrival. That means they have to take 2 tests. The tests, again, are done by collection of specimens by dedicated personnel. From the 22nd of December, in these hotels, we have found 28 confirmed cases. 35 cases were found on the 12th day of testing, and 3 cases were found on the 19th day of arrival. So that means when people arrive at the airport, they have to take a test, they have to get a negative test result, and then they take designated transportation to designated quarantine hotel. During the quarantine period, they have to take 2 more tests to make sure that travelers arriving in Hong Kong would not come into contact with the community, local community, during the quarantine period. This is to prevent the spread of the disease in the community. So this is the latest arrangement for the new cycle of the designated quarantine hotel scheme. Here, I would like to thank the hotel industry for their full support and cooperation. The whole scheme has been working well so far, and after we have taken stock of the experience, we will be doing even a better job. So I pause here and take questions from the floor. Thank you.
Please identify your media outlet. TVB, I'd like to ask, there are 4 new additional hotels and there were previously 4 hotels, so what are the 8 total hotels and what is the total number of subsidies? Now, regarding the latest round of designated hotels, there's a list of 36 hotels. You can check that out on our website. And in the second round, there were 4 additional hotels. In the second round, same as the first round, the hotels, when they are converted to a designated hotel, they have to clear out the whole hotel for quarantine purposes, and they can only accommodate quarantine travelers. If they don't have a separate channel for food and beverage and so on, they'd have to suspend operations in the restaurants because they are at risk. The global epidemic is severe and the situation is changing, so the quarantine measures will be adjusted accordingly. So all these factors make it hard for us to forecast how many arrivals in Hong Kong need to stay in designated hotels. So basically our plan is, if the hotel occupancy is insufficient during the contract period, if the occupancy is less than 50%, then we will supplement the difference, and the rate is 70% of the tariff or a ceiling of 600 Hong Kong dollars, and that will be the subsidy amount. So in the first round, the designated hotels came under that arrangement, and we will use the same arrangement in the second round. And we don't know how much subsidy will be needed in the first round because it has only been implemented for about a month, and the contract period will end on 19th of February. So right now, currently, we don't know the exact figures. Next question.
Ask why are the 4 old hotels replaced with 4 new ones? Is it because they are ranged between like rather high prices? And secondly, can I also follow up on the civil servants' declaration of allegiance? Can you clarify if civil servants can still take part in peaceful legal protests, because you said they can express their views on government policies as citizens, but any such expression in public could lead to conflict with their civil servants' identity? Thank you.
Okay. Perhaps I can answer your second part of question after I finish all the questions on the designated hotels. As regards the questions concerning the designated hotels, there will be an addition of 4 hotels to the second round of the designated hotel schemes. And basically, in this second round, we have increased the number of hotels that charge at a low-end price, meaning less than $1,000 and specifically less than $500 a night. And as regards the other 4 hotels that have decided to withdraw from the scheme, is because of some, their own considerations, commercial reasons, and all that. So I will not comment on that. But after these, selections for the second round designated hotel schemes, we now have over 80%. Actually, is 83.5% of the total numbers of hotel rooms that would be charged below $1,000 a night. Thank you.
好，下一個提問。好，呢位記者。香港01嘅第一個。
Hong Kong 01, I want to ask the hotels in the first round. The government says how much is the government subsidizing them? The occupancy rate has been less than 50% for a certain period of time. And why do we have to swap out 4 hotels and add 4 new hotels? Is it just because the tariffs were too high per night and the occupancy wasn't high enough and so on? And now we have less hotel rooms. So do we have more room to accommodate returnees from South Africa and the UK? If we can relax the 21-day requirement, can we allow more returnees? Well, regarding the second round of designated hotels, we made reference to experience in the first round and found that $1,000 or below, or the demand for hotels under 500 was large. So therefore, we added the number of hotel rooms in that price bracket. In fact, amongst the applications, there are more hotels that set the price at under $500 or under $1,000. So there's an increase in that range, in that bracket. Now, the existing hotels have withdrawn. Some have withdrawn, some have participated. We have considered a basket of factors, including the designated hotel. We need different tariffs, different hotel rates, the distribution, and if they participated in the first round, we look at the occupancy rate, the operation, etc. Of course, each hotel has its own considerations. They took part in the first round. Would they want to participate in the second round? They would have their own considerations. So when you add all these factors together, we now, in the second round, have 36 hotels, the same number. Well, we had 4 withdrawals and 4 new entrants. So the number of hotel rooms, we have to wait till the end. That is the end of the 2-month contract period. We have to review the occupancy rate of each hotel. For example, in the latest figures, we see the latest occupancy rate is almost 60%. Compared to earlier stages, that's higher. So we can only know how many hotels had less than 50% occupancy rate, and according to our subsidy scheme, we have to subsidize them. So when we set the mechanism, we had to negotiate with the hotel industry and share the risks. We also foresee the quarantine measures will be extended to 21 days. So that affects returnees, the number of returnees. So there should be some reduction of hotel rooms from 12,000 to 10,000 rooms. So returnees from the UK or South Africa, if they had stayed more than 2 hours before returning to Hong Kong, they cannot board a flight. That is a very strict requirement. So it's something that has to be undertaken reluctantly in light of the global situation. The Department of Health will continue to assess the situation, and they will adjust accordingly, and we'll have to see whether there are adjustments needed to the mechanism. We understand that there is an impact on Hong Kong people. Next question.
Over there, please. I'm from Oriental Daily. Good afternoon. For the 4 hotels that have withdrawn from the scheme, what is the price range for the room rates for these hotels, and what was the occupancy rate? From the information I have, for these 4 hotels, their room rates are at in the lower price range with a high occupancy rate. But as I've explained just now, there are various factors for hotels to consider whether to stay or quit the scheme. And of course, the hotels have their own consideration. We have our own considerations too. On the left there, the lady reporter. I'm from TMHK. For the 4 hotels that have quit the scheme, did they choose to quit the scheme, or was it the Bureau who decided not to renew the contract with them after various considerations? Also on oath taking by civil servants, the Union for New Civil Servants saying that because of this arrangement, some of their executive committee members may not be able to stay in the government. Is it true that the executive committee members of this union would not be able to fulfill the declaration arrangement? Do you have a list of the members of this union? Will their members be unable to fulfill the declaration requirement? And when are they considered civil servants, and when are they considered individuals as they express their views? Let's say if they are interviewed by reporters on the street, if they give their views, is that considered to be given in the capacity of the as a civil servant or just as a member of the public? Can you explain further? On designated quarantine hotels, in the second round of the scheme, the arrangement is the same as for the first round. We have discussions with the sector. So when we decided on the second cycle of designated hotels, we wrote to invite applications from interested hotels, and then we review the applications, and then we have discussions with the hotels. Of course, at the end is up to individual hotels to decide if they want to join the scheme. At the same time, we look at the priority accorded for different hotels, because there are more hotels applying for the number of rooms we need. So that's why there is this process. So we work closely with the sector, basically. And then in a new round of designated hotel rooms, we want to make sure that there are more rooms under $500. At the same time, we have to make sure that the designated quarantine hotels would continue to meet the infection control requirements while being able to take contingency measures and carry out the required work. On civil servants' oath-taking, perhaps I would respond to the questions. Now, civil servants, of course, members of the public as well. So if, for members of the public, they enjoy freedom of expression and freedom of speech, and these freedoms are protected by the basic law. That point is very clear, and that is something we must defend. At the same time, if a member of the public is also a civil servant, then in that capacity, we have to consider what we do and say are not in conflict with our capacity of civil servants. For example, we're talking about public activities, and when people take part and express their views, they have to pay attention to their capacity. So that is the principle we go by. On actual circumstances, it would be hard for us to tell you what is allowed and what is not. We have to look at actual circumstances. And then you mentioned this union. Of course, it's a matter for the union to decide how to deal with its own matters and business. But for civil service colleagues who are members of the union, now, or rather for civil servants in general, we now require serving civil servants to sign a declaration to confirm that they uphold the basic law and pledge allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR government. So, so all colleagues must should have no difficulties making that declaration, because when they become civil servants, of course, they will support, uphold the basic law, pledge allegiance to the SL government, and be held responsible to the SL government. So we are now proceeding with the relevant task. We'll see after, say, a month or so, if there are colleagues who refuse to sign the declaration, how we will follow up on these cases.
English questions asked about the civil service participating in peaceful protests. As I said just now, the right, the freedom of expressions, the freedom of speech and all that are protected under the basic law and the relevant Hong Kong legislation. As a civil servants, based on our existing circular, except for certain categories of civil servants coming from a certain grades, the others are basically can join peaceful protests or demonstrations expressing the views, because it's as individuals, they have such a rights. But of course, in exercising these, make sure that it's peaceful, it's lawful, and also if they want to express the views or do some acts in public, just to make sure that there will not be some conflicts between their role as an individual citizens and the role as a civil servants.
好，仲有冇問題關於指定檢疫酒店？
Any other questions on designated quarantine hotels, please? Yes, over there. Good afternoon, Mr. Nip. I'm from the Hong Kong Economic Journal. 2 questions on vaccines. Yes, vaccines? No, in other countries they have started to administer vaccines. For those who are vaccinated, if they come to Hong Kong, do we still have to mandate them to stay at quarantine hotels because they may not need quarantine? Also on our own vaccination program, what is the latest progress, please? Okay, on vaccination. The first question. Say for travelers who arrive in Hong Kong, if they have already been vaccinated, then would there be any changes to the quarantine policy? Well, we actually rely on experts on such matters. Sure, when the experts consider the matters, they would make recommendations according to the latest situation. I think we must be patient. Now, experts have to review the data on relevant vaccines and also the experience of the health authorities around the world. And then the experts will review the vaccination policy. So on the question of vaccines, there's a need for experts to review the matter and come up with some recommendation. And so the public are made aware of that. On our own vaccination program, we are working full steam in making the necessary preparation. First and most important thing, of course, is the supply of vaccines. For vaccines, we have procured. We are in close liaison with the suppliers. We want to confirm the delivery time to Hong Kong. That's the first point. And secondly, there is need for emergency authorization for the use of vaccines in Hong Kong. I understand the expert advisory panel on vaccines will meet today to consider the use of vaccines. And when we are able to confirm the delivery time of the vaccines, and then we could also complete the process for giving emergency approval for the use of these vaccines, then we could start the vaccination program. We're still aiming for completing the necessary preparation work within January. And then we'll be ready when the vaccine arrives. And when the vaccine is ready for use, then we could start the program at once. In terms of preparation, well, we considered the 4 different types of venues, that is the community vaccination centers, private clinics, private hotels, residential care homes, and also general outpatient clinics of the hospital authority and the Department of Health. So there are these 4 different types of venues. We will have to work out the actual arrangement for the inoculation arrangement in these places. We need to consider the manpower, the relevant codes, and so on. So we need to make all this ready. At the same time, in the whole vaccination process, for people who receive the vaccine, we must make sure that they would be able to be vaccinated in an orderly manner. And then they must give informed consent. And after vaccination, there is need to observe the person for 15 to 30 minutes. So we need also medical backup for this purpose. And we need to get that ready. And after the start of the vaccination program, there is need to monitor the situation. We need to see if there's any adverse reaction or any emergency situation. And then we need to do the reference analysis and assessment. For this monitoring process, it will be on the basis of the existing mechanism of the Department of Health, but it will be enhanced. So we will take a orderly approach, and we'll work full steam. We're working full steam on that. Thank you.
呢位
Now, TV, I'd like to follow up on civil servants have to take an oath within a month. So I want to ask, why is it so urgent? In the past, if there were any changes to civil service regulations, there was a longer period of consultation. But the union have expressed views that the implementation is rather urgent. So I would like to ask, is there any reason for why they have to take the oath so urgently? And if they don't take the oath, their contracts might be terminated. So will there be a deadline? For example, in the new civil servant union, they might have taken part in protests or congregations. So will you be using these regulations to follow up on their previous behavior? And for non-civil service contracts, how will you handle the oath-taking requirement? Well, first of all, this is not an urgent exercise. Back in 2019, this has already been raised. In July last year, we had submitted our study to the panel in Legislative Council, and in the last 6 months, we have met with civil service bodies. We consulted them and negotiated with them. In October of last year, for new civil servants who joined after 1st of July, we had made arrangements. And in December last year, we had met with the civil service consultative bodies, and we had presented them with our draft copies before issuing this circular. Now, after the circular had been issued, the Bureau departments will submit this notice to all civil servants and will ensure that the exercise will be conducted orderly. And so it's not urgent. Second question about the declaration of serving allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR, being responsible to the Hong Kong SAR government. This responsibility is nothing new. Every civil servant who's joined the government, they have already undertaken this oath. So signing or the declaration is just an open confirmation and pledge that they acknowledge this requirement. So in this respect, we will continue forward. Now, for people who refuse to sign the pledge, to these civil servants, we will ask them to submit a reason for why they do not sign, and we will consider using our civil service employment regulations to deal with these cases. We will have to terminate their contract. Now, regarding liability, and first of all, dealing with signing the declaration, as I said just now, people who refuse to sign the declaration, then we will have to use the civil servant management regulations to handle these. Now, if it involves speech or behavior that had breached the pledge, that is a separate issue. Now, whether they have breached the pledge, they need to have behavior that gives rise or suspicion that they have breached the pledge. So first we have to deal with the misbehavior. Now, if this inappropriate behavior breaches civil service regulations or our requirements, then we'll have to use our disciplinary measures. And if it's confirmed that that behavior is in breach of regulations, then when we consider sanctions, if they had signed the pledge, if they know that they have to live up to certain obligations and they deliberately breached that pledge, then in our disciplining actions, we will consider all these factors. And lastly, for non-civil service contract colleagues, they will also need to sign the pledge because they have a direct employee-employer relationship with the government. So when we complete the existing civil service employees, we will follow up with, but they will be of a much lesser figure. I'll take one more question. Apple Daily, I want to ask, you said that there were 4 hotels that withdrew from the designated hotel scheme. So before the contract ends, are there tenants that have not completed the 21-day stay but have to transfer hotels? So how will you arrange for them to complete the 21-day stay? Will there be hotel transportation provided? How many tourists are involved? And can you tell us which 4 new hotels are included? And I also want to follow up on the civil service oath-taking issue, because the secretary in LegCo said that civil service should not take interviews with anti-China organizations. We had asked our RTHK or Daigunwei, is that an anti-China establishment? Because you said that they should not, civil servants should not undertake interviews arbitrarily. So could you help us define anti-China establishments? The first question about the designated hotels. Well, that's why today I had to announce the second round of designated hotels. In the first round, it will conclude on 19th of February. So 1 month before that, we will notify the hotels so they have time to prepare. And if there were advanced bookings that straddled the first round, then they would have to book another hotel. So in this respect, we have negotiated with the industry. We would want to minimize the hotel tenants' inconvenience. That's why 1 month in advance we provided notice so that we can prepare. For the new 4 hotels, you can look it up on our website, our dedicated website. Your last question. Now today I answered LegCo questions. I answered a councillor's question, and his question was a question on a friend's behalf. And the question was, if a civil servant openly, as in the role of a civil servant, accept an anti-China establishment interview, is that problematic? And my response was, if a civil servant acting in the capacity of a civil servant and openly participates in an anti-China establishment interview, well, I think the situation is very clear. So I hope there's no misunderstanding. Thank you.